Welcome to the AdNavseam podcast, where classical gourmands everywhere can finally get their fill. Join us for a delectable discussion of Greco-Roman civilization stretching from the Minoans and Mycenaeans through the Renaissance and right down to the present. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are your hosts, Dr. David Noe and Dr. Jeff Winkle.
Welcome, listeners, to episode 124 of the AdNavseam podcast. My name is Dr. David C. Noe, and I'm here in the basement of the vomitorium with my good friend and co-host, Dr. Jeffrey T. Winkle. How are you, Jeff?
I'm feeling good, but I'm a little worried about you. I mean, are you keeping it together over there?
I am not.
No? Is this going to be one of those afternoons?
That's correct.
All right, yeah.
The episode today is called Use Your Allusion Part 2.
That's right.
Classical references in popular music, and we are in your wheelhouse, aren't we?
We are. So part 2 means we did this before, didn't we?
Yes.
Yeah, it was,
some vague, dim memory.
You don't sound too happy about it.
No.
No? I'm happy about it, because you're right. This is in my wheelhouse.
Absolutely.
And I'm always like the chance to defend my title as Johnny Pop.
That's correct.
And this is one of those.
For me, this episode is going to be like Hercules wrestling with Antaeus.
Really?
On the shores of northern Libya. Would you stop bumping the microphone and moving the table around?
Sorry, my gosh.
Yes, every time, right, Antaeus succeeded in touching Mother Earth, he regained his strength. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So as we go through this episode, every time things start to, kind of go a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for?
Awry?
Yeah, awry.
Yeah.
They start to get a little weak.
Yeah.
Then it's going to, I'm going to touch the earth, so to speak, and it's going to go back to metal or Haydn, right?
Okay.
Real music.
That's right.
Not this pop stuff that you're trying to peddle to.
So you're angry about all the genres and subgenres that we're talking about today.
And all of the above.
Okay. Right.
The subgenres, all of the below, and all of the above.
All the above. Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. Well. Okay. All right. You got your fighting gloves on.
That's right.
I'm gonna have to try to. I'll step 2. I'll see what I can do. Mm-hmm. All right. So I think I didn't ask you how you're doing, but I think we have a good idea.
I think we have a pretty good idea.
Right. So
we had a lot of smog yesterday.
Oh, it's crazy
here
out
in
there.
West Michigan, as
And
people
today.
may know. The news sources were saying that Grand Rapids had the worst atmosphere of anywhere in the world yesterday.
Really? The
Yes.
whole world?
The Canadians were sending their smoke down from the shores of Ontario. I don't know what they were burning up there, but it all wafted down here.
Well, there's a lot of area between Grand Rapids and Ontario.
And it's all filled with smoke.
Why did it stop here?
It moved on eventually.
It's pretty bad out there today. Again.
It was like Caucasus belching forth smoke from the soft underbelly of some Canadian mountain.
Nice. I like you bringing that back around to a
You're
classical
welcome.
reference. Yeah. So, hey, Dave, you want to start us with an opening quote?
Not
today?
really, but I'll do so.
You'll do so? Okay.
Yeah, because that's what we do here.
All right.
The opening quote today, skipping over the non-existent shout out,
Yes.
is by one Nathan Cobb, the inventor of the salad, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. Yeah.
Didn't he shove together ham and little tiny corn niblets or something?
Corn niblets, and aren't there some deviled eggs in there too?
Why
or
would people
something?
do that?
I don't know.
Okay.
Right.
Nathan Cobb in the journal Aletheia, Truth, 2016. It's entitled Mythology and Music.
Now, before you read this, let me just a caveat, right? So I was trying to dig up, a learned quote or something of somebody writing talking about the connections between classical myth and pop music. Couldn't find anything.
Non-existent, eh?
Right? So I don't either. That's a vacancy waiting to be filled, or
Right.
it's just a sign that maybe this just isn't worth anybody's time trying to make these connections. I would disagree.
I'm inclined to the latter.
Okay, all right, I got you.
At present.
So, but I found this quote by Mr. Cobb.
Yes.
And he is at least talking about kind of allusions in art that postdates antiquity.
Okay.
So I thought it would be a good jumping off point.
A good jumping off point. And here we go. Mythology has always inspired artists and composers, and many of the most important masterworks of the late Romantic and Impressionist eras utilize the vibrant stories of mythology. Broadly, the discipline of art is concerned with conveying a subject or concept in a way that will evoke an emotional response from the perceiver. That is pretty broad, Mr. Cobb.
Yeah.
Mythology provides a narrative and message familiar to every man, creating a common foundation from which the artist can lead his audience. Artists of the late Romantic and Impressionist eras used mythological stories in incredibly diverse ways, giving credit to the vast creative possibilities of mythology. Turner and Corot used Grecian myths to usher in a new style of art, while Renoir, is that right?
I think it's Renoir.
Oh, sorry. While Renoir used the same set of mythology to prove himself a master of an established style. Composers like Wagner used the narrative foundation of Norse mythology to create an intricate operatic cosmos, whereas Ravel and Debussy, is that right?
Is it Debussy?
Debussy.
Debussy is how you say
Sorry.
it? Okay, yeah.
Crafted music, apparently neither of us knows, into stunning portraits of Grecian myths. Corot's painting, Orpheus leading Eurydice from the underworld, is an excellent example of how mythology and art can be interwoven. Mythology has inspired many of history's greatest artists, and it played a pivotal role in the artistic world of the late Romantic and Impressionist eras.
Okay. All right. So
what do you make of this, Jeff?
well, I mean, I don't think there's any huge major insights from Mr. Cobb. I mean, no shade on Mr. Cobb.
After all, he invented the salad.
Exactly right. So always respect for that. But I think that one of the things that I'm taking away here is that he's trying to kind of answer the question of, well, why bother with illusions in the first place? And that's something I'd like to explore for a little bit. And I think he says something along the lines that mythology is kind of a universal language.
Okay.
Right? And the best of our myths speak to something universal. It kind of hits us on a soul level and a DNA level. So when you retell these stories, you refer to these stories, you're tapping into a power that can be very effective.
Right.
Right.
And affective also.
There you go.
Right. It can produce emotion.
Yes.
In the recipient.
Exactly. Right. So this comes up when I teach my myth class. Like when I show them, "Oh brother, where art thou?" This film that takes place in the American South in the 1930s, but it's also wears on its sleeve its debt to the Odyssey. It's a retelling, at least on some level.
Which epic the Coen brothers say they have never read.
Right. Exactly.
They picked it all up just kind of by the back of cereal boxes or where?
Well, I think they're lying. Because one of the things that the Coen brothers are famous for is kind of messing with interviewers and not answering their questions. So I would be shocked if they hadn't read the Odyssey. But even so, maybe they were trying to say something about still kind of the universality of that story. It's out there enough that even if you haven't read the Odyssey, you've probably heard the Cyclops story.
Correct.
Right? And so one of the questions I always ask my students when we watch the film, and by and large, the vast majority of them enjoy the movie.
Right.
But I ask them, why bother alluding in the first place?
Right.
Like, why does retelling the Odyssey in that way make it a better story? Does it make it a better story? So what's the point of an illusion? So in Cobb's article, I mean, he's talking about mostly, works of art and works of music from an era where perhaps amongst at least, the educated set, this was more common knowledge. Everybody grew up with the myths, or, if you had a kind of a Renaissance, post-Renaissance education, these were stories you simply knew.
Okay.
And so they're speaking a language that they could be fairly confident that the bulk of the audience would already know. I don't think we live in that world anymore.
So this is what we could, if I may interrupt, we could label as the first use of an illusion is a template for a universal experience.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
I think that's fair to say. Right. But I think that what I was trying to say is that I think that's very true. That when we read myths, or when I teach myths, and even when students have never heard the story before, they can recognize something of themselves in it.
Right.
But when you're alluding in a work of art and a work of music, doesn't the power of the illusion depend upon the fact that your audience recognizes the illusion, or is that not important?
Well, I think we spoke last week, maybe the week before, about how illusions don't have to be received by the audience in the way that the artist intended for them to be valuable.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's definitely true in the way that Ovid alludes to Virgil, right? So, I mean, this kind of game playing has been going on for a long, long time. It's not just something that showed up after the Renaissance. Oh, let's allude to antiquity.
Yes.
For whatever reason, this has been going on in probably every culture that has a back catalog of works of art.
Right, which in fact is the definition of a culture. So that would be all of them, right?
Right, there you go.
You've got to have a common supply of literature and references in order for it to constitute a culture.
Yeah.
So what would you say is the second reason?
Well, this is something I've seen. I mean, this is very popular today, and not just in pop music, but in literature, and I think in film as well. Is you take a piece of a famous story, and you flip the script, you turn the tables, and you focus on the experience of someone who's in the original versions of the story, the earliest version of the story, marginalized.
Right.
And so example that this made me think of is like Madeline Miller's Circe.
Yep.
So take that character and then tell the story from her perspective, or Margaret Atwood's The Penelopead.
Right.
And so the story of Odysseus, but from the point of view of Penelope.
Or in this instance, maybe Mishka could record the podcast and we do the sound engineering.
There we go. Exactly. All right.
Flip the script. Turn the tables.
All right. So I guess we'll hear from Mishka how she feels about that. Right. So that's a very kind of common I think that I see nowadays. It's another one of these ways that keeps the myths alive, and they can also take on various shades. They often will have a more kind of ideological form to them.
Yes.
Some people like that. Some people don't like that.
That's exactly what Virgil was doing with the Aeneid.
But true enough.
Aeneas is a fairly minor character in the Iliad.
Yeah.
Until his story is picked up by Virgil.
Yeah. Exactly.
How about the third use of allusions?
This one is we have one example. I don't know if we'll get to today, because it depends on how much time we got. But this was a very popular one in terms in the realm of pop music, like in the late 60s and the 70s, like the prog rock era, where for whatever reason, a lot of prog rock bands became very fascinated with Tolkien and Norse mythology and Greek mythology as well. And you would kind of tell the story very often in just kind of a simple narrated form, as just kind of a table on which you build kind of this very complicated orchestration. And so it's kind of you use the story as kind of a hook, but it's really there to kind of show for the musicians to show off what they're able to do.
I see.
Yeah.
So same story, different medium.
Different medium, right? And it also seems to be like the more obscure story that you could pick, the better. And so it's kind of to show off not how look how great I am at this instrument, but look how deep my knowledge goes of kind of this obscure corner of arcana.
That's very Alexandrian, right?
Yeah.
It's very neoteric.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And the fourth one?
And the fourth one, I think this overlaps with all the previous ones, is that you allude to something classical to raise the bar, to raise the level. Simply by tapping into these ancient stories, it's a signal to the audience that you're saying something serious.
Yeah, whatever is said in Latin sounds profound.
Exactly right. So, and it's not necessarily to show off. That might be part of it, but it's also to, again, if you're going to tell a contemporary story and say, look how similar this story is to this very ancient, universal story, it lends weight, it lends gravitas to the story that you're telling.
It's like using Roman numerals, right?
Yeah.
On your credits, the credit scene, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Makes it look more sophisticated.
Right. And so as I was kind of combing through, doing Google searches and trying to find pop music that have mythological themes, and there's dozens upon dozens of examples of this, I noticed that a number of particular allusions come up a lot. And a lot of some are just kind of throwaway lines, but the siren, the siren song is something that is dropped into lyrics countless times. And not usually in any kind of extended way that would kind of be worthy of examination in a show like this.
Right.
Orpheus and Eurydice, that's a story that seems to kind of continue to fascinate. We have one example of that in our list today.
Well, it involves death and romance.
Death and romance, right, exactly. So which are,
and unfulfilled wishes.
Yes, exactly, right. So I think it's kind of easy to recognize the power of that story. And then lots of vaguely Odyssean themes about being homesick, missing home, being lost,
coming of age. Right.
You might throw in a Homeric reference,
right,
to underline that. Right. So I tried to pick a number of songs here that I didn't pick these songs because I love these songs. In fact, most of them I wouldn't say I love them. I think they're interesting. I tried to pick a selection that had a varied selection of different kinds of references, rather than saying, "Hey, these are the best." That's not why I picked.
Well, and would you even be able to pick which ones are the best? I mean, frankly.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess we've already established that your aesthetic judgment is perfect.
It is perfect.
Okay.
Exactly right. Yeah.
So what is the first one?
Well, we're going to start off with a song by a band called A Perfect Circle. And this is a song called Orestes. And this comes from an album from the year 2000 called Mer d'un Homme.
Well, there you have it, Jeff. So how would you describe this musically, first of all?
It's kind of even though this came out in 2000, this is to me it stinks of kind of the mid 90s, kind of
Depressing.
It's kind of that over serious kind of grungy template, which I don't care for at all. Yeah. So
I'm with you there.
Yeah. Right. So,
now, how about the lyrics and the mythological meaning?
Okay, so here's what I'd say is kind of a key lyric here. What's interesting about this song is that it's called Orestes, but Orestes is never mentioned in the song. All right, which is I think that's kind of an interesting way to allude, right? And so the songwriter is basically saying, okay, this guy's name doesn't show up anywhere in the song. And if you want to kind of understand this better, you have to do a little, homework yourself.
I see.
Or if you know the story, maybe you'll make the connection. So the lyrics go, liberate this will to release us all, got to cut away, clear away, snip away and sever this umbilical residue that's keeping me from killing you and from pulling you down with me in here. I can almost hear you scream. That's pretty dark.
Yes, right? It is grim.
Right. And
visceral.
It's very visceral. And so it made me think of... I think people listen to music, they consume art for wildly different reasons.
Absolutely.
Exactly right. So
one of the number one reasons is to create mood.
Right.
They want to create a certain mood, right?
Right.
I don't feel right. I need to listen to some blues, or I feel sad. I want something that's upbeat.
Yeah.
And they don't even really think about the meaning much of what they're consuming. It's I think that's very creation true. Of a mood.
Right. Exactly. So this is a song written by a local Grand Rapidian. This is a guy by the name of Maynard Keenan. Mm-hmm. He's most famous for, this is one of his bands, but he's the lead songwriter for a band called Tool, which has got a rabid following.
Really? Never heard of it.
There's a guy in the band that I used to be in, a huge Tool fan, and would follow them around the country. It's kind of has kind of a
Grateful Dead.
Yeah, exactly. So and so he grew up in Grand Rapids. He went to the Kendall School of Art and Design. If you're local, you might recognize that name. And had a famously, for those in the know, embattled relationship with his father. And so he visits this theme a lot, kind of this relationship that he always wanted with his father but never had. And this seems to be kind of a classic example of this. So, which I thought was okay. So Orestes in the myth, he's got to kind of return from a kind of exile and has to avenge his father. By killing his mother. Right?
Yes, that would be Clytemnestra.
So to my mind, just from that basic outline of the story, it doesn't seem the best illusion for someone trying to tell a story about a son's embattled relationship with his father. Unless you're talking about Orestes was, his father was absent.
True.
For
in the war.
In the war.
But what is he going to choose? Is he going to cast himself as Electra?
Well, get out of that family. There's got to be there's maybe better examples to talk about kind of a tortured relationship between father and son. I just know Orestes is the best one.
Yeah.
I don't know if Maynard knows his myths all that well.
Deeply enough.
Right. Yeah. So I found this from this is a quote from songfacts.com, where there's nothing official or peer reviewed about this. This is where just anybody can go on and say, hey, this is what I think the song is about.
And call it facts?
Okay. And they kind of stack these up. But I thought this was interesting. This anonymous author writes, this song can be referring to Maynard's childhood. Maynard was abused as a child emotionally and physically. In this song, he's talking about how he often wanted to kill his parental figure who was abusing him. So maybe there you're getting some of the kind of the Clytemnestra aspect of it. And I don't know. But couldn't because of the emotional attachment he has to them just by being their son. Umbilical residue keeping me from killing you. The only thing that's stopping him from going after his father is the fact of their biological connection. And so this is a topic that Maynard has mentioned in Tool songs as well. So apparently this is a well that he goes to often. So, this is a personal thing that kind of darkness in a pop song, I'm not drawn to that. Maybe it's just kind of a story I can't relate to.
Right.
But
because you were blessed to have a good relationship with your parents.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. So I can understand why some people might relate to this and kind of commiserate with this, but as a workup, this is not something I would go to even create a mood.
Yeah. So we go on from there to something that's much more upbeat.
Okay. Well, upbeat, but not as upbeat as this band is usually known for.
Well, let's just roll the clip and let people figure out who it is.
Okay.
Down the street, they're all singing and shouting, staying
hiding their shame behind a hollow laughter while you are crying alone on your bed. Pity Cassandra that no one believed you, but then again you were lost from the start. Now we must suffer and sell our secrets again, playing smart again in our hearts. Sorry, Cassandra, I misunderstood. Now the last day is on it.
So that was Abba, right?
Of course, yes.
Chiasmus.
Yes, right. So that was one of the A's singing there.
Yeah, what a sweet voice.
Very sweet voice, right? So I always say about people who claim that they don't like Abba,
Right.
they're lying.
Really?
Yeah, I think everybody at some level likes Abba, even if they don't want to admit
So
it.
I don't know much. Is it Swedish? Is that who these folks
Yes,
are? Okay.
exactly, right.
And is the Abba, is that an anagram for their names?
It is. So you have, I think it's Anna Fried,
Okay.
Benny, Bjorn, and then Annika.
Really?
Another kind of.
You're not sure.
I'm not sure about the second A.
Yes.
So the A's are the women and the B's are the two guys.
Clever.
They were at one point they were married to each other.
Okay.
And it was the kind of the falling apart of those relationships that kind of ended to.
Wow,
that led
that's
to
a
the end of
story
it.
in itself.
Oh, exactly. It's a saga.
Right. But tight harmonies,
Tight harmonies and
operatic kind of range.
exactly, and then pop hooks, the size of meatballs coming at you. Right.
Right.
And so
That's a mixed metaphor. Anyway.
I mix them with the best, right? I heard not so long ago that there's been lots of people who are dying for an Abba reunion.
Okay.
40 years later, and I think they were offered like upwards of like $1 billion.
No way.
To reunite, and they still turned it down.
No, what's money?
Well, yeah, exactly. Right. So this is a song called Cassandra from 1981. It was not released on an album. It was a B-side. Mm-hmm. And it's probably as somber as this band gets. I think when most people think of Abba, they think, Mamma Mia, here I go. That very bright,
No, I don't know, but I'll take your word for it.
You gotta know some Abba.
I don't.
songs. You don't know Abba?
Leave me alone.
All right. I'm guessing a good amount of our audience will know at least a
Probably
couple of
because they're educated. What do I know?
right. So, and
I love the story of Cassandra, though. Let me say.
Okay, yeah.
I believe she is likely the most sympathetic character in all of Greek myth.
you put her at the top of the list.
Absolutely,
Yeah, yeah.
one or two. She's so suffers so much and completely innocent, so far as I can tell. Right?
Yeah.
Approached by Apollo with this love advance, and she changes her mind at the last minute because you shouldn't dally with the gods. They're so dangerous.
Right.
And Apollo says, "Can I just have this one last kiss then to, say goodbye? I want closure on our relationship." And
Yeah.
she foolishly agrees, at which point he spits in her mouth, cursing her to always tell the truth,
Right.
but never be believed.
Right.
Then for 10 long years, she prophesies of the fall of Troy and nobody listens to her.
Exactly.
Then she gets hauled off to, am I telling too much of the
No,
story?
go for it.
She
Yeah.
gets hauled off to Mycenae, right? And there's that great scene in Aeschylus's Agamemnon where she's, trotted into the city of Mycenae and Clytemnestra plays nice and then kills her.
Yeah.
It's awful.
And she not only sees the death of Agamemnon coming,
Right.
but she sees her own bloody death, which
Yes.
is imminent as well. No, I'm with you. Very sympathetic. I wonder, from an ancient Greek point of view, the detail that she reneges on her promise.
Well,
Is that? That seems
maybe
to be
that's
kind of the
potential hubris,
flashpoint.
you're saying?
Yeah, I guess so. I not to say that the Greeks wouldn't have found her
Right.
sympathetic. I think they did, but I think one of the lessons is in those kinds of stories is that if you make a promise to the gods, you're trapped.
So maybe it's the rash oath.
The rash oath, right? So
But the twist
she's
is-
doomed either way,
Right.
Right. So she recognizes. There's so many stories like that where the human target of the gods recognize the god is going to stay beautiful and young forever. I'm going to grow old and they're going
Right.
to discard me. I think that's what Cassandra realizes,
Right.
But she chooses. It's neither choice is good.
So what do you think about Abba's telling of the story?
I think that it seems to be on the face of it a fairly straight telling of the story. Down in the street, they're all singing and shouting, staying alive though the city is dead. I see this kind of a reference to Troy, right?
Yep.
Hiding their shame behind hollow laughter while you are crying alone on your bed. Pity Cassandra that no one believed you, But then again, you were lost from the start. Now we must suffer and sell our secrets, bargain, playing smart, aching in our hearts. Not great lyrics.
Pretty good.
It's a little, I had a rhyming dictionary open on my table as I wrote that, but it's not bad.
You're tough.
Yeah,
You're tough.
I mean, it's okay.
Beautifully delivered, though.
Beautifully delivered, right? I mean, beautiful voice, beautiful vocals. I mean,
Right.
If you like that 80s synth, you're in that. That's your wheelhouse. Then this is for you. I think it has an aspect of. It's very common in pop music is that you dress up a very dark subject in kind of in happy music. I wouldn't say this is a happy song, but it's
upbeat.
It's upbeat. The vocal is beautiful. When that chorus kicks in, you got those nice harmonies. But it is about something rather sad.
Is the point to play a joke on the audience?
No, I don't.
To defeat their expectation, we're singing something lively and in a major key, but it's actually grim and depressing.
I don't think it's a joke. I think it's something that creates attention, and that tension is interesting.
And you like this?
I do like it.
Okay.
I mean, I see why this was a B-side. This was never a hit. No, it's not the best of Abba, but if this is your B-side, hey, that's not too bad. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was just kind of doing some other kind of searching. Cassandra is also a theme that at least a few other pop artists have gone to. There's a contemporary artist who goes by the very humble name of Emmy the Great. Mm-hmm. She also wrote a song called Cassandra, which also seems to kind of tap into a very literal retelling, repurposing of that story. So this is one, and I think that we were talking about kind of the universality of myth. I mean, who can't relate to to someone who this is right and nobody's listening to you, right? I think that's a universal experience.
So where are we headed next, Jeff?
We're going to stay right in the same era. So
Okay.
Cassandra came out in 1981. This is from the following year. This is a song by a band called Utopia, which was never a major band, but was led by, some would say, the great Todd Rundgren.
Who's that?
He is probably most famous as a producer, a record producer, and so he's kind of the mastermind behind a ton of kind of massive albums from the 1970s and the 1980s, and he had kind of a small solo career as well. Have you ever heard the song "I Don't Want to Work, I Just Want to Bang on Me Drum All Day"?
No.
Okay. He had that one called "Hello, It's Me." So he's been on both sides of this. He's probably best known for being the producer behind Meatloaf's "The Bat Out of Hell" album, which sold millions and millions.
Right.
And so he formed this band in the late 70s, early 80s called Utopia. And this is from an album called "Swing to the Right." And the whole album is kind of a concept album. He was reacting to kind of the rise of the Reagan Revolution.
Okay.
So Ronald Reagan elected in 1980, and Todd Rundgren, California, or actually East Coast lefty, was concerned about the direction of the country, and so he wrote this album called "Swing to the Right," and this is a song called "Lysistrata." Mm-hmm. And let's listen to it quick.
So what do you think, Jeff? Not first impressions, but tell us what to think, Johnny Pop.
I like it.
Okay.
I mean, that's a solid pop song.
All right. What makes it solid
I think
instead of squishy?
There's nothing revolutionary or experimental about it. I mean, the chord progressions are kind of straight out of kind of pop music 101, but I think it's got a great rhythm. I like the changes. I'm a sucker for kind of those ooh la las in the background.
Right.
It's a big late 70s, early 80s tight pop song, and it's very listenable. I mean, that's to me that's a toe tapper, a sing along song.
And the rhyme scheme,
not bad.
Lysistrata and you gotta and some things like that.
Well, I think when you choose Lysistrata and you include that name in your song, you're a bit handcuffed. So what are you going to do?
Ricotta. I don't know.
So, again, it's not Shakespeare.
Okay.
But I mean, it's not supposed to be.
All right.
So again, he's make of what you will of Mr. Rundgren's politics. He was worried about kind of the fist in the air, what he saw as kind of a militarization of American culture at the time.
Hawkishness,
right? And so Lysistrata, for our audience who doesn't know, it's that's most famous as a comedy by Aristophanes, in which the Lysistrata is the central female character.
Right during the middle of the Peloponnesian War.
Exactly right. And so she decides she's had enough of it, and so she gets the women of Athens to get band together.
And no relations, right?
No, yes.
They deny relations to their husbands.
Exactly. They deny relations to their husbands. They take over the Acropolis, and they're going to force the men into peace by this very clever tactic.
Right. This power play.
Right. And so it's a very funny play. It's a very graphic play. And so I think this is an example of one of using Lysistrata in a American rock and roll pop song.
Okay.
I just find that kind of interesting in and of itself.
And flipping the script.
Yeah. And so it's from the point of view of it seems to be Lysistrata's husband or lover. And so he's begging her to pay attention to me, right? Open up the bedroom door, let me in,
right?
And he starts the song basically by saying, "I've got to go to war. I've got no choice about this, right? Here can you just see me off, one more time?" And by the end of the song, he's given in and he promises that he's not going to go to war. He puts down his gun.
So was this song popular?
No. It was. I think it maybe cracked the top 40.
Top 40.
I think maybe like 38, and then it dropped out.
Can you imagine Casey Kasem introducing this song?
I would love to hear. Well, if it cracked the top 40, he probably did.
He would have to, right?
But now I would actually doubt this cracked the top 40.
It takes a certain amount of courage to label a pop song Lysistrata.
It does, right?
The only thing worse would be Thesmophoriozusae,
Exactly,
which was another Aristophanes play.
Right. Try coming up with a rhyme for that.
That's
one.
right.
But I was looking around. He performed this with his band on the David Letterman show.
Oh.
So I think he definitely, or he or the record company said, "Oh, this is a hit.
Let's give it a try."
It never landed. But I'll listen to this. I'll put that on. I think of all the songs we're doing today, this might be in terms of just pop goodness.
Yeah,
probably my favorite.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we move on from that to the final one before the looming break.
Yes.
And that will be No One Knows My Plan.
Yes, by They Might Be Giants.
Okay, roll the clip. Now, what is that, Jeff?
I love it. I do. I love it.
Why?
Because it's so left field.
Where's the virtuosity?
Oh, it's the weirdo combo of things, right? You didn't go through a They Might Be Giants phase.
Sort of.
Oh, you did.
No, not really. I never owned one of the albums.
Okay.
I never owned a T-shirt or went to one of the concerts.
Okay.
But some 400 years ago, when we were young men,
yes,
they were really popular.
They were
at our former institution,
it's
which
true.
Shall be named Calvin College at the time.
Yeah.
A lot of people were running around crazy about They Might Be Giants.
So you remember that?
I do.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I got the impression that they were, marketing themselves as like the intellectual choice.
I think there's some truth to that.
I didn't want to follow the intellectual choice unless the medium was actually intellectual.
I see. Now, what's this?
It was a reaction.
If we can kind of
revisit, psychologize me for a moment.
At this point, early mid '90s, were your musical tastes, were they already kind of solidified in the way that they are now? Okay.
Classical music and heavy stuff.
Gotcha.
High tempo virtuosity and operatic.
So you were kind of already into that then.
Yeah. So I enjoyed a few of these songs, but they got just too cutesy after a while.
Okay, I can see that. I can sympathize with that. I think that what I was very into They Might Be Giants for a good decade.
Wow,
and
a decade.
I did. I mean, I think there's kind of a sweet spot of their albums, which I think by and large are very, very good. This is from an album called John Henry from 1994, which is a great album.
There's something about Istanbul and Constantinople. And...
That was a cover song, so that's not my favorite.
Okay,
names, but I
didn't even know that.
That's one that they're probably sadly known for.
Why is that sad?
Because it's a cover song. It's not even their own stuff. So there's so many much better They Might Be Giants songs. But I have a personal connection to. I was in 1990.
Are you going to do some name dropping here?
No, in 1990, I had not heard of this band. But I was happened to be out in California, and I went to a taping of The Tonight Show.
Okay.
And the guest host, then Jay Leno, who
Right.
took over. And tonight's musical guest, They Might Be Giants. And I'd heard of them. They came out, and they were weird, and they were funny, and they were great. And
you were hooked.
I was hooked, and so I went on that trip. I went out and bought the cassette of their album Blood, and I loved it.
That's the one with the bluebird of friendliness, isn't
yes,
it?
exactly. And Istanbul is on that one as well.
So that's a good line, a bluebird of friendliness.
Yes, exactly. And there's
Whistling in the dark.
right. There's also there's a number of classical references in the song. There's in that song of the Bluebird of Friendliness songs, like after killing Jason off and countless screaming Argonauts.
Yes, I remember that. But what does that mean?
Well,
It's not there's no consistent story. That's what got me. I'd almost prefer, I can't believe I'm saying this publicly, I'd almost prefer country music.
Really.
Yes.
Okay, that's your.
It's going a long way, isn't it?
A very long way.
Because at least there's a consistent storyline.
Right.
They tend to all be the same.
Yes.
Loss of vehicle, loss of pet, loss of woman, loss of job.
Exactly.
But there you can at least follow the story.
Yeah.
With these kinds of too smart pop songs, what's the story?
Right. I get that critique. I think that if all of my collection were kind of in this vein, it would drive me insane. I think
Right.
sometimes I have a taste for a little bit for the weird.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember friends of mine talking about these various songs and just kind of and being astounded just by the oddity of it all and kind of reveling in it.
Xenophilia.
And so it's a lot of it just seems to be kind of like a Rorschach blots.
Okay.
Thrown at the wall, and it's kind of up to you what
It's
you make.
great when you're an undergrad, but
Exactly. Maybe it doesn't age all that well.
that's what I was thinking. You stayed with it for a decade.
I did.
So let's talk about this song, No One Knows My Plan.
Right. So here are kind of the key lyrics here. So when I made a shadow on my window shade, they called the police and testified. But they're like the people chained up in the cave in the allegory of the people in the cave by the Greek guy. No one understands. No one knows my plan.
It's Plato.
It is Plato.
Why do they say it like that?
By the Greek guy?
Right.
Because it's funny.
Okay.
Right, exactly. It's just kind of a tossed off reference to Plato.
In the allegory of the people in the cave by the Greek guy.
By the Greek guy. Yeah.
It's like reading someone's class notes for philosophy 153 or something.
Right, who didn't catch Plato's names.
it's just the Greek guy.
Right. So I think you can either find that irritating or you can find it kind of charming.
Okay.
in ways.
Do you want to read the random internet interpretation?
Right. So there's a whole website dedicated to
Don't even tell
fan
me.
interpretation of They Might Be Giants.
Where did the
songs.
name come from?
It's the name of a movie from the 1950s.
Because they might be anything, right?
Right, exactly. Right. So I remember when watching, again, this is not Leno, but Letterman, when they were the musical guests, and Letterman, who at least back in the day I really, really liked.
Yeah.
He's interested. Tonight's musical guests, They Might Be Giants. And he turns to Paul Schaefer and goes, when are we going to find out?
Yeah. I saw that joke coming.
You did?
In fact, I just made it a few minutes ago.
Exactly right.
Right. You watched a lot of late night television.
Well, back in the day, I did. Not anymore. No,
Okay.
I'm in bed by 9 o'clock.
7:30.
Right. Man.
Get your AARP meal and turn in.
Exactly right.
Okay, random internet interpretation.
Right. So this is, again, anonymous source. Make of it what you will. The shadows in Plato's allegory are representative of false ideas, misconceptions, say, of happiness or love, or another philosophical idea. The people in the cave only saw these shadows as puppets the manipulators were puppeteering, until one guy gets out and sees the things that only he saw as shadows of before. True ideas, although the sun is representative of actual full enlightenment, but that's another story. Therefore, when the speaker sings about making a shadow on the window shade and the neighbors calling the police, he's saying that he was falsely accused of a crime he did not commit. The neighbors saw something that they thought was criminal activity, but it really wasn't. They didn't get the whole story. They only saw the shadows, not the forms.
Okay.
Right? There was a lot of these interpretations that this is about being accused of a murder that we didn't commit.
This proves my point.
What is your point?
Which is that the story isn't coherent because someone else has to fill in all the gaps and explain it to us.
But isn't that
and
kind of fun?
his interpretation is as good as anyone's.
What's wrong with that?
It used to be more fun to me than it is now.
All right.
I just want a well-told story.
Gotcha.
I don't have to fill in all the gaps myself.
So you don't like songs where it's kind of left up to you to kind of how to feel about it. You want to be told what to feel.
Yes, I like a good pedantic song.
Right. So you are a country music fan, right?
No, I'm
'Cause
not.
there is no nuance in this
Well,
country.
I can't believe you just lost half the audience. The only thing I don't like about country is the vocals.
Is the twang?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't like that affect.
Yeah.
It does not appeal to me.
Right.
A lot of other things about it I like a lot. You know, the guitar playing. Is it Brad Paisley? Is
He's a great guitarist.
Great guitarist.
Yes.
Yeah, that's very appealing.
Right.
So
Yeah, I
the
would.
slide guitar, I like that sound. The dobro, the dulcimer.
Well, because we should clarify. I think there are like bluegrass music.
Yes, I'm verging into bluegrass
right.
here.
When like, in terms of like the great bluegrass players, they're phenomenal.
Right.
I guess when I say country, I mean like that horrible kind of pop country.
Shania Twain.
Yeah, it's just.
Yes, but speaking of verging into bluegrass,
Yes?
it's time for the ads.
This episode of AdNavseam is brought to you by the good folks at Hackett Publishing. Hackett Publishing, they've now been in business, I think, as I always say, they're as old as me.
Right.
52 years.
Yes.
And they have been bringing affordable, wonderful, erudite translations of the classics as well as many other corners of academia to you all this time from where they got their business offices in.
Cambridge, Indiana, and Indianapolis, Massachusetts.
Is that where they are?
I'm quite sure.
Some kind of switch around.
Check it out.
Okay. All right. Anyway, if you've been listening to, from the beginning of this podcast, we have been using translations published by Hackett for many of these episodes. Most recently, Stanley Lombardo's translation of the Aeneid. We were using a couple of translations of the Ovid's Metamorphoses from the episode right before this one.
Lombardo and Ambrose.
Yep.
We'll use some of their stuff on a particular Augustan episode.
Yes.
Eventually, we'll use a lot of their materials for tragedy when we get there.
Yeah, we got to get to tragedy.
Some of you may be thinking this whole podcast is a tragedy. I'm sympathetic.
Yeah, we'll get there eventually.
Yes.
As I've often said, I use these texts in my classrooms. I have them on my own shelves.
You got a copy in your glove box in case of an emergency.
Exactly right. If I'm stranded somewhere, I want to have my Lombardo's Metamorphoses at hand. Mm-hmm. And these guys have been with us from the very beginning. They believed in us, and you dropped them like an email just saying, "Hey, would you be interested in this?" And they were on board right from the beginning.
That was my chutzpah, but it paid off. We're going on 3 years.
3 years.
So
yeah.
almost 3 of those 52 years that they have been in existence, they have been closely aligned with the AdNavseam podcast.
Right. So not only a great product, but great people there as well.
So instead of cursing the darkness of no one's interested in ancient and important things, why don't you do whatever is cursing the darkness? Bless the light.
Yes.
And, sign on with Hackett, purchase some of their products, support this humble podcast.
Yes. So to do that, take yourself to hackettpublishing.com. It's HACKETT publishing.com. Check out their vast array of offerings. Find the ones you want. Click them over to your little digital satchel. And if you type in this coupon code, Dave, what's the coupon code?
It is AN2023.
AN2023. That will get you
20% off and free shipping. And there is a silver lining to this purchase as well.
What's that?
Like a foil wrapped baked potato.
Yeah.
The silver lining is you support this podcast.
So do not hesitate.
This episode of AdNavseam is also brought to you by Ratio Coffee. Mr. Mark Helweg, the entrepreneur who lives over in Portland, Oregon, decided it was time that people stop drinking this mass-produced coffee, and he thought, I will invent a machine that will elevate people's home coffee experience. And he did it. He created the Ratio 8 and then the Ratio 6. Jeff, you are an owner of both machines.
Yes.
And tell us what you think, please.
I love these machines. I use my Ratio 8 every single morning. And Dave, guess what arrived in the mail last week?
Your hulking flagon.
My hulking flagon, my weighted.
That's incredible.
My weighted carafe.
Did you pour out the kryptonite and then put some coffee in there?
I did. Oh my goodness! And it's a game changer.
It's everything you hope for and more, isn't it?
So I mean,
don't put it in the microwave.
No, I will remember not to.
Because it's mostly metal.
It is.
So
it's a serious piece of equipment.
It is. It's heavy. People are always astounded by its heft.
Right. So I mean, before this, I had the beautiful hand-blown glass carafe, which now sits on the shelf as kind of a conversation piece.
Right.
And so what I had to do is I get up in the morning much earlier than my wife does, and so I'll brew up a pot for myself. But by the time she wakes up, that coffee has gone cold.
Right.
Well, no longer. This carafe keeps that coffee hot for hours.
Piping
hot. Mm-hmm. And so, I love that machine.
Yeah. So just this morning, I was at a restaurant establishment, and I won't try to give away the name of it, but it was something like the regional domicile of waffles.
Gotcha. Right. Yeah.
And the coffee was surprisingly passable.
Yeah. Oh, it was. Not
at
bad.
the regional domicile of waffles.
At the Ardoff.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I was comforting myself all the time by saying, tomorrow I will again drink from the ratio 8.
Exactly. Something to look forward to.
Right.
Right. It does. I mean, there is that. I wouldn't call it a downside, but it ruins coffee.
Your other coffee experiences.
Coffee experiences.
For sure.
Right. Exactly. Right.
So if you want to have your other coffee experiences ruined,
Yes.
Listener, go to ratiocoffee.com, RATIO, browse the extensive catalog, look at the 8 or the 6. Don't be put off by the price. Yes, these are not inexpensive machines, but they're not going to break down and need to be thrown away like the squirty plastic extrusion varieties you can pick up at the store.
Very, very true.
So what should they do then when they've selected their choice?
Then you would type in the coupon code ANCOA6.
Yes, this is good only for June.
Right.
A6.
A6.
And you'll get 15% off your purchase.
What does the A stand for? What
It stands for affordable.
affordable. There you go. All right, Dave, as we get back into it, we're going to cover a song that I discovered. I think of all these, this is the only one that I discovered just simply by typing in Google pop music and classical references.
You say we're going to cover it? Am I playing bass or what's going on?
Oh, I was hoping to. Bass and harmonica.
I'm not chill enough for bass.
No, you do have to be chill to play bass.
Yeah, you do.
Right, you just have to kind of loom there in the background.
I can play a mean harmonica.
Really?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Well,
Shall we just roll the clip?
Let's do it.
I dreamed one night that I was young, but life had passed me by, haunting all the gates and doors, watching from the sides. I read my future in the stars with weariness and love. I spent long nights waiting for Theseus to come. It's not happening no more. It's not happening no more. I am the Minotaur. I am the Minotaur.
So, Jeff, how would you describe that?
We're going to start with you. What did you think of that song?
It sounded like it was trying to be a little bit of Dylan and focusing on poor diction for the most part. How can I sing these words with the least amount of diction? Not a fan.
I gotcha.
I like every consonant very carefully articulated.
Oh, really?
I want it to bite and snap and stand out to you, the listener.
Okay, I got you. All right. So the Dylan comparison, I definitely has. I think it has kind of a '60s vibe to the band that I thought of was like the Byrds.
I was thinking of the Byrds just now. Kind of like the Byrds.
Yeah, kind of that breathy, heavy reverb vocal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Aspiring a little bit to the Beatles, maybe.
Yeah. It's definitely Beatlesque.
Tommy James and the Shondells.
Yeah. Wow. Now you're digging.
Crimson and Clover, you know that song?
Of course they do.
Right.
Yeah. So they're employing this a very kind of common. I don't know if you would call it a trick, but I'm going to call it a trick, a songwriting trick, where you have the that acoustic guitar riff more or less to that song does not change, and the way you kind of keep it interesting, the way you kind of build tension is by just simply changing the bass. And so you have kind of a 4-note bass progression, but that acoustic guitar riff never changes, or it changes very, very little. It stays the same, and that's a very kind of easy way to kind of construct a pop song. And I got to admit that I'm kind of a sucker for it. So I think I like this song a lot better than you did.
Okay.
I wouldn't say this is a great song, but it's an interesting. Again, if we're exploring the classical illusion part of it, it's told very vaguely from the point of view of the Minotaur.
Right.
And he's in his labyrinth. He seems to know Theseus is coming. He's waiting, and Theseus never shows up.
Yeah. But why is he waiting? He wants to be killed. He wants to have the chance to kill.
Yeah.
I know this is where someone would say, "Oh, come on. Don't subject a pop song to any kind of, logical or philosophical scrutiny." But that's what I have to do. I want to understand, what is he saying?
Yeah, exactly. Right. No, I think it invites those kinds of questions.
Right.
I think that's fun. I think that's interesting.
Okay.
Right? So the kind of the sense of, I think this can be overdone, is that you take there was a Broadway musical that came out a number of years ago called Wicked.
Yes.
which tells the story of Wizard of from the point of view of the Wicked Witch of the,
Right.
of the West. You take the villain and then you kind of make the villain a hero to
Right.
some degree. I think it's almost become kind of a cliche.
Well, they should tell the story of the Wizard of Oz from the perspective of the Munchkins.
Oh yeah.
And the name of it should be Stilts.
You've thought about this, haven't
No,
you?
I just thought it up,
You
just
thought it
on
right
the
now?
spot. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, you jot that down in your notebook.
I will. One of the many musicals I'm working on, as you know,
Right.
including Be That Way, remember?
Oh, yeah, that's you got to come up.
The first musical based entirely on resentment.
Every song.
Yes.
I mean, I'd go to that.
I know you would.
I'd buy that album.
If you didn't go, I would be quite upset.
Right. So our Minotaur in the song, or Minotaur, is it?
Yeah, Minotaur, as they pronounced it.
I dreamed one night that I was young, but life had passed me by, haunting all the gates and doors, watching from the sides. I read my future in the stars, which is hard to do when you're stuck in a labyrinth.
That's true. Right. And with bull eyes, they don't have good long-range vision.
No, it's terrible. With weariness and love, I spent long nights waiting for Theseus to come. It's not happening no more. It's not happy no more. I am the Minotaur.
Yeah.
I am the Minotaur.
More Minotaur.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
you could have thrown in a shore, don't you think?
exactly. Yeah. What's all of this for?
Yeah, something like that.
Something to ignore.
Yes.
There's a lot
Why
of
is the
places
path lined with spores?
Yeah. So there's another website called Pop Matters,
Okay.
which reviews lots of different albums. This is this is a song called Minotaur from a band called the Clientele.
2010.
2010.
The Clientele.
That's a pretty cool name for a band.
You think so?
And from an album actually called Minotaur. So this is like the
They
title
went big.
track. They went big.
Okay.
They were all in. And so on this website, Pop Matters, the reviewer writes, while Minotaur is a song written from the perspective of the fabled monster from Greek mythology, one waiting for the hero's Theseus to slay it, McLean, that's our singer-songwriter, seems to be referring perhaps to the group's general lack of commercial success. The band is more popular in the U.S. than its native Britain. In its opening lines, I dreamed one night that I was young, but life had passed me by. So you feel the Minotaur you're stranded. Like the one thing that's going to make you famous that is being killed by this hero, that's not even going to happen.
I see. It's a little bit of a stretch, though, because if you're more popular in the U.S. with 330 million people than in your native Britain with, I don't know how many, 40 million, something like that.
Yeah.
Probably less. Aren't you already having success?
I mean, I don't.
Did this guy at popmatters.com run the numbers?
I don't know, but I would guess that if you ran the numbers, they might be more popular in the U.S. than in Britain, but it still means that hardly anybody's ever heard of it.
Yeah, I'd never heard of him.
So, and I think it's it's since the digital era, making it as a band, nobody buys music anymore.
No.
Right? So that's
they subscribe to Spotify.
exactly right, and where artists will get 1.2 cents for every play.
Right.
So I remember reading. Do you remember the band Cracker?
No.
Kind of popular in the 90s.
No.
But I'm forgetting. They had kind of a semi-big hit. And he wrote this article kind of detailing how much he made from Spotify plays.
Right.
And there were millions of plays of this particular song.
Right.
And he, as the principal songwriter for the song, made I think $13.86.
Wow, that's incredible.
And he was saying that
he should have gotten a sponsorship.
But so bands, to make it today, right? You have to make you
got to tour.
You got to tour, right? So you can't just rely on album sales anymore.
No.
So maybe that's what McLean from the Clientele is. I don't know if he's lamenting.
So you're having some sympathy for him.
I am.
Okay.
Right? And so, but I think it's again kind of an interesting twist is that you write this kind of this melancholy pop song and invites you to be sympathetic with this half bull, half human creature that's there basically to devour anybody that wanders into his domain.
Yes, I think we've mentioned this before, but most visual portrayals, with maybe one exception from antiquity at least, it is human body bull's head.
Yes.
There is one ancient depiction of bull's body human head.
Oh, really?
Which is deeply disturbing,
That is
isn't it?
horrifying.
Yes.
I've been
Why?
thinking
Why?
about that.
Why though?
I don't know what by that is. I mean, I'm going to use the L word. I think
liminality.
So the Minotaur is a liminal creature, right? What is?
But does it matter though? You want a human? Isn't it better to have a human head? That's where our intelligence resides, in the brainal portion, right?
I suppose. I think it probably comes from just kind of a reversal of expectations. We're so kind of attuned to, if you see a depiction of the Minotaur, oh yeah, bull head guy.
Yeah.
And so if you flip that, okay, that doesn't work.
Does a bull's head look more like a human head than a bull's body looks like a human body?
I think that's it.
You think that's
I think
it?
that is it, right? That's what makes it so disturbing.
They both have people faces, though.
They do, right?
Unlike birds.
That's right. Birds, the creepiness of birds.
Yeah, I think that's the subtitle to, the life of birds. We don't have people faces.
That's right.
It gets pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But let's go on.
Let's go on. Okay, so the next song is by a woman named Sarah Bareilles.
Yes.
Who is a wonderful musician, great piano player.
Did she write a song called "Don't Write Me a Love Song"?
Yes.
Or "Not Gonna Write You a Love
Yes.
Song"? What is the title of it?
Yeah, that's kind of the hook is not
Yes.
going to write you a love song. But
I think that is a great song.
great pop song, great piano riff.
Great singing.
Yes,
I really like that song.
she's got a wonderful voice. And this is a song from her album Amidst the Chaos. This is our most recent song.
2019?
Just a handful of
It's
years
4
ago.
years ago.
Yeah, this is a song
We're
called-
covering this on a classics podcast, and it's only 4 years old.
only 4 years old.
That I'm not sure that's right.
This is a song called Orpheus, and let's listen to a clip.
Don't stop trying to find me here amidst the chaos. Though I know it's blinding, there's a way out. Say out loud. We will not give up on love now. No fear. Don't you turn like Orpheus. Just stay here. Hold me in the dark, and when the day appears, we'll say we did not give up on love today.
No, I like that.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yes, I'm predisposed to like it.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah. So no, I think it's a beautiful song. She's got a beautiful voice. She's kind of known for her piano-based music, and this is kind of a turn in a slightly different direction. But I thought this was beautiful. So she's tapping into the Orpheus and Eurydice myth. And when I listened to the song and I read the lyrics, I thought, okay, that she's using it as it's a love story. It's a broken-hearted anthem, right? She does not want her Orpheus to go.
Don't you turn like Orpheus.
Right.
Just stay here, hold me in the dark, and when the day appears, we'll say, we did not give up on love today.
Right. So it's not directly about. She's not retelling the story. But
It's a reference.
She's comparing the one she loves to Orpheus, and so she's playing the Eurydice role, right? So I think that's that. So I think like I said at the beginning of the episode, that seems to be a very common story that pop musicians go to.
He was a musician after all.
Exactly right.
Orpheus was. It was his playing that made hell stand still temporarily.
And right. And like Cassandra too, I would say that Eurydice is a very sympathetic figure. And
Right.
she's very two-dimensional. We don't really get to know her. I mean, in Ovid's telling, she's dead before she can say a word, right? And so she exists as this quest object for Orpheus. But the fact that she's out walking barefoot, she's bitten by a snake, and she goes down into Hades.
When she's being chased, remember, pursued by Aristaeus,
Yes.
another one of Apollo's sons, because he, has been provoked by Cupid to fall in love with her.
Right.
And in the course of her flight, she dies by stepping on the snake.
Right. So she's sympathetic. I mean, it's a very similar to a story like with Daphne too.
Right.
Right. So under the influence of Cupid, she's in danger. And so as such, she's very sympathetic. I think again from the Greco-Roman point of view, that story seems to be much more about Orpheus to me.
Yes, it's about the immortality or potential immortality of literature.
Yes, exactly right. The divine power of song
Right.
to transfix even the gods.
Yes, to turn back hell.
Right. And so Orpheus he's one of these countless death and resurrection figures. Right?
Yes.
He can go down into Hades and he can return.
Yes.
But it's at a cost.
He doesn't get everything.
He doesn't get everything. Right. And so here in the song, Sarah is singing as Eurydice, and she's kind of locating the heartbreak on that particular character. So I think it falls into that camp of kind of turning the tables.
Yes.
Taking an element of a well-known story, but the focus is going to be in this direction.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned Apollo and Daphne. It occurs to me that a country music star, a country music performer could retell the story of Apollo and Daphne in a NASCAR setting.
Go on.
Don't you think that would work?
What are you thinking? Exactly?
Well, they're both in cars racing around the track, and Apollo's trying to gain on Daphne, and at the last minute she has some kind of apotheosis, right? Some kind of, not apotheosis, some kind of a transformation into I don't know what, but a yacht or
a different mode of transportation.
Formula One, right? Or like a biplane or some kind of a glider, right?
Yeah.
And then he's down there shaking his fist in his NASCAR vehicle.
I'd listen to that song. If we
the rest of it just writes itself.
Yeah, I gotcha. I think ultimately, if we do a Use Your Illusion 3, we should look for classical references in country songs.
Are there any?
I don't know. I think that would be really interesting. But
then we would have to listen to some country music.
I know. These things come at a cost.
Yes.
Right.
So the last one we're going to... do you want to read a little bit of another one of these highly reliable websites, songfacts.com?
Yeah, songfacts.com had to say about this. It says, Bareilles expanded on the song's meaning during an interview with Vanity Fair. Okay, so here we have the songwriter herself saying what the song is about. But as I learned in grad school, it doesn't matter what the author says, right? It's the death of the author.
Oh, yeah. All meaning is given by the audience.
Right.
None of it comes from the
None.
author. None.
So disregard what I'm about to read.
Banish the thought.
Right. So she explained it as it is about learning to cope with the confusion created by this new chapter in the world where politically and socially and culturally, it can sort of feel like the world is on fire a lot of the time. So in 2019, she was responding to the political moment that she was feeling.
It was a little bit pre-COVID even.
It was a year before COVID.
Imagine if she had said this post-COVID.
Right, so.
But I don't care for these wiggle words, though. This sort of new chapter, it can sort of feel like, to me, that indicates a person's not really sure what they mean.
No, exactly right.
And I guess that's okay, but what are you doing talking to Vanity Fair, right?
I read this
magazine of record.
I read this and I said, that's not true. Well, she doesn't even know what the song is about. I mean, the song works so much better if you locate it in kind of a deep personal relationship. What's wrong with that?
Right.
What's wrong with that? The broken heart is a bottomless well, right? That song, good songwriters can always go back to. You don't have to make it about something political.
Yes,
right?
That's a country music title right there. The broken heart is a bottomless well.
Man, you should be writing this down. You can put this in your musical.
Yeah.
Right. So I really want to hear this musical.
I feel like you're mocking me a little bit.
That's all about resentment.
Yeah, Be That Way. That's the that's a working
Be That
title.
Way, exactly.
I've been working on it for...
That's the signature song from that,
That's
right?
correct.
Exactly.
I've been working on it actually for most of my life. The last one we're going to look at is from a group called what?
Genesis.
This is the Phil Collins group?
Yes, this is in their this is from 1971. Do you know a bit about kind of their history?
No, all I know is he plays the drums well.
Yes.
I don't care for his voice.
I got you, right. So they're probably best known for like all their pop hits from the 80s.
Yeah.
They changed as a band in the 80s. They really went kind of 3-minute pop song. But in the 70s, they were this famous prog rock band where they had these 13-minute songs. You know Peter Gabriel? You heard of
Guitarist?
He's In Your Eyes, Sledgehammer.
Okay, you're losing me. You're losing me.
He was an original member of Genesis before he went solo, and he was still in the band.
He had his exodus, you might say.
He did have his exodus. Yeah, exactly. Right. He left the band in the mid 70s, but he was kind of the leader of the band.
Okay.
And so it was a lot of these long, complicated, virtuosic melodies, and often layered with kind of mystical, mythological themes. And so this is from a album called Nursery Crime. Crime spelled C-R-Y-M-E.
Oh, instead of rhyme, it's a play on words.
Exactly. Right. 1971, and this is a song called "The Fountain of Salmachus."
Okay.
Let's listen to a clip.
From a dense forest to dark pine, Mount Ida rises like an island within a hidden cave. Nymphs and gifted child, Hermaphroditus, son of gods, so bring it there. As the dawn creeps up the sky, the hunter caught sight of a togo in desire for conquest. He found himself with an acclaim he'd not beheld before. Where are you, my father? Give wisdom to your...
Well, Jeff, I think that's enough of a sample, maybe more than enough.
Yes, exactly. Now I'm feeling kind of sad that this is the song we're ending.
We're ending, yeah. Ooh.
Oh, it's self-parody.
They take themselves way too seriously.
It is. But I mean, it's out of that early 70s art rock, milieu. It's laughable. That did not age well. That's Peter Gabriel singing live there. There in the chorus, I think you could hear a little bit of kind of the melodic Genesis rock that you hear later in the late 70s, early 80s, but for the most part, wow, that's
so this was the kind of stuff that paved the way for John Denver, right?
How are you seeing John Denver coming out of this?
I just mean it was an alternative to this kind of stuff.
Oh, I see. Yes, exactly.
Something with a storyline, right?
Right. So speaking of the story, this is, if I can go back to songfacts.com, because I think this is fairly accurate. So according to Ovid's Metamorphoses, book 4, a naiad nymph called Salmachus fell in love with Hermaphroditus, the son of Hermes and Aphrodite. When he bathed in her fountain, she embraced him and prayed to the gods to be united with him forever. The gods heard her prayer and merged their bodies together, transforming Hermaphroditus into an androgynous being. Hermaphroditus then cursed the Salmachus fountain so that any man who drank or bathed in its water would also become androgynous. So, I mean, that's a fairly obscure, if you're going to allude to classical mythology, that's a kind of an odd one to do.
But it's highly sexualized, right? In some sense, and that's maybe why they were drawn to it.
I think so.
I don't know.
I think maybe not so much kind of the sexualization, but another thing you see a lot in particularly British prog rock of this era is androgyny. And so like David Bowie, Ziggy Stardust, Peter Gabriel, also the way he dressed on stage was kind of meant to kind of be kind of a mix between masculine and feminine. And so I think that's maybe, if I had to pick one thing that what drew them to this story, or drew Peter Gabriel to the story, is kind of a mythological notion of androgyny. So it was part of kind of their elaborate stage act at the time. Like I said, to my eye and ear, it does not age well.
Yeah.
It's pretty weird.
Yeah, I was, as we were listening to the music, we were watching the performance. Honestly, it's not the, if you're correct to interpret this as a song about androgyny, maybe, that's not really the part of it that doesn't appeal to me. It's the over seriousness of the performance.
Yeah.
And I would say the low quality of the way this song was written.
Yeah.
Is that fair? I mean, who am I to criticize Genesis? But
I remember, speaking of our college days, is that I had lots of heated arguments with people about pop music.
When you were supposed to be in class?
Yeah, no, I always went to class.
Okay.
This was outside of class, maybe between classes. But I knew a couple of guys that were huge prog rockers. And they denied that anything from Genesis after 1981 even exists. So I imagine if I could go back in time and talk to these guys, they would say, "Oh, this is great.
This is great stuff.
This is great stuff," right? And they'd be wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, there you go.
Wrong then, wrong now.
All right. Well, I think we need to wrap it up.
We do.
We got to get out of here.
Yep. So, hey, Dave, before we go, tell us a little bit about the Moss method and LLPSI, would you?
Right. Well, why don't we flip the script here? And why don't you tell us about them, since you've been listening for these many episodes?
Well, listener, if you go to mossmethod.com, you will find my colleague Dave's wonderful method for learning Greek. There are, how many modules do you have?
4 modules.
4 modules that you can purchase, and this is a system. This is a way of studying Greek that will take you from neophyte to erudite in an entertaining, engaging, and personal kind of way. This is not just kind of press play and you're on your own. You have direct contact with Dr. Noe. There's the weekly Moffus hours where you can get together via technology with people from around the world studying Greek. And as Dave often says this, you might be able to find better systems out there. Maybe out there in terms of what you get for the price and the personal contact. I would disagree. I don't think you can do better. And so
nicely done, Winkle.
So
I should hire you as my pitch man.
Yeah, you should. So if the audience goes to mossmethod.com, they're going to find a lot of free stuff there.
Right.
You can sample a lot of the videos out there. If you want to, if this has been a dream of yours to learn Greek, if you want to kind of get deeper into some of the topics we talk about on this podcast, this might be for you.
Now, can you do the same thing for LLPSI?
I'm not as studied on that one, so I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about the LLPSI.
So if you want to learn Latin ab initio from the ground up, go to latinperdiem.com and check out my program using Hans Orberg's Lingua Latina per se illustrata, book 1, Familia Romana. Roma in Italia est, Italia in Erdropa est, Graecia et Italia in Erdropa sunt, et cetera. And you can learn how to read Latin, speak Latin, write Latin. And again, it's a program that I have designed for the beginner. And you watch me as I teach other Latin students, and you have the weekly interaction. It's a comprehensive course. As with the Greek, there may be better programs. I can't say. I'm not going to pass judgment on them. But in terms of value, I believe this is outstanding and cannot be beat.
And they can check out for free the hundreds of mini lessons.
Thousands
Thousands
actually.
now.
Yes, I'm getting close to the 2K mark.
Wow. Okay.
We're going to do something special when we get to 2,000 of these 4 to 6 minute little mini lessons on more than 100 different Latin authors.
Fantastic.
On the YouTube channel.
Yes. So check it out.
We need to thanks, Jeff. We need to say some thank yous.
Yep. As always to Mishka. She might have to do a little bit more heavy lifting on this one because we're throwing these kind of obscure songs and clips at her.
She's tough. She can take it.
She can handle it. Scott Van Zen and Ken Tamplin, thanks to these guys for the great music.
Now there's music.
There's music.
No mythological illusion, but I love the rapid virtuosic playing and the tight melodies.
That's your wheelhouse.
I
right
like
there.
that. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. So, hey, we still need shout outs. We still would love ideas for episodes. So don't hesitate to get in touch with us. You can write to Dave at AdNavseam.com. Don't forget that V.
Or Jeff at AdNavseam.com. Do not forget the V. Jeff, what are we doing next week?
I think we're at a TBA.
It's another TBD, isn't it?
It
To be
is.
determined.
Yes.
I'd like to tease that I have been thinking for some time now about devoting at least one episode to answering this question.
Yes.
What is classical education?
That sounds bigger than one episode.
Yeah, this is a hot topic, perhaps among many of our listeners who teach at classical schools. Some of them teach at so-called classical Christian schools.
Yeah.
They may teach at public schools, at charter schools, Catholic schools, not teach at any schools. But this is a question very much in the air. What is classical education?
Yeah.
And there are a lot of opinions out there. And guess what?
What?
Many of them I don't like. So if we can figure out a way to put this together,
Yeah.
I think we'll explore this.
That sounds fantastic. Yes.
Not next week, but it's in the works.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. I'd be into that as well. And Dave, you have our gustatory parting shot today.
I do. This is from a man named James Boswell, a historical figure about whom I know very little, but his dates are 1762 to 1795. He is most famous as the individual who wrote the biography of the English author Samuel Johnson. So this is James Boswell. He says, "My definition of man is a cooking animal. The beasts have memory, judgment, and the faculties and passions of our minds in a certain degree, but no beast is a cook."
Well, I like that. It's kind of an updating of Aristotle.
Isn't that nice?
I like that a lot.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.